So,
Yeah.
I can't tell you, that was just awesome for me to watch, because I have been sitting with this stuff for so long that to see the new episodes with an audience is amazing.
Well, that's actually, as it happens, that's where I wanted to start. Because, you've now seen, I guess, 5 episodes in movie theaters on Lincoln Center campus,
Yes.
right? And I just wanted to start by sort of asking you about your impressions on the experience of watching this thing that was like, nominally intended for the one format, but then there's, you're a man of cinema, right? So that.
Well, just quickly, I just want to point out, if you could stand up, we have Maceo Bishop, the cinematographer, and the first camera, Chris Bottoms. Stand up, Chris. For being able to catch all of those moments from like 8,000 meters away. So, unbelievable. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's don't really know how to do anything differently. So I don't really, like, while we were approaching this, it wasn't like, okay, this is going to play on the small screen, So all of the decisions, even down to like the sound and the music, are just how you approach a story. Mm-hmm. And I think that the benefit here is over time, you could start kind of really playing with how characters affect one another. A plus B equals C, but what does B plus C look like? That's not A, So you see different characters, and when Dougie's with Asher, he's a different way than he is with Whitney. When Whitney's with Dougie, she's a different way. When Kara's with Dougie, you can kind of really play with everything over time because you're changing the situations. But I think the beauty of it for us was just like, you could treat each episode as a kind of contained unit, but also driving it forward. But to me, it really does play really well with everybody here, just because it is. I think there's a little bit of like a pressure release that happens, because sometimes it can get a little uncomfortable, and it's just nice to laugh.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask because the situation that we're all in right now is so opposite that of the normal TV viewer,
Yes.
right? We're in a room full of like 300 people watching these 2 episodes, and sort of I don't know what like, did you have any impressions on kind of what that experience was like versus that of sort of the average TV viewer?
I think it's definitely, there's a communal aspect that I think really is. It's a completely different experience. Like I had an experience here in this theater where I watched The Tenant, the Polanski movie, The Tenant, and it was so funny. Everybody in here was hysterically laughing, and it was a great experience. And then I went home and watched it, and I was petrified out of my mind, and it really was an amazing thing to be able to watch the same thing and have a totally different experience. But I do just think that that's just how human nature is, and I think that it's awesome that we can all come here and do this too. Not only is it that you guys get to see 2 weeks ahead of everybody else, and you get to pretend, or not pretend, you get to act better, because you've seen it all, But yeah, so it is also just like, we spent a long time on the sound, a long time on the music, and it really does feel like special for me to hear all of the stuff ricocheting in different speakers, and the look of it. We spent so long on that, trying to get it to look a specific way. It's HD, in this world of 4K. The fact that like we snuck that through is crazy to me. But it has, everything looks the same. Everything looks the same when you watch it. Everything is crisp. Everything is beautiful. And this was kind of a reaction to that in a lot of ways. This can't look like or sound like anything that you've seen on television. So.
Yeah. Well, then I wanted to back up a little bit. I'm sure this will be like retread with some interviews you've been doing lately, but specifically I wanted to ask about like the origins of the show, and I have a hunch it maybe resides in a work of film criticism that you
Yes.
wrote in 2016 for
yes.
the magazine CinemaScope.
So I actually just was talking about this, but hey, I could recite lines, right? No. But no, I was just talking about this, and it's so funny because originally I was just a fan of Nathan For You. I was watching it on Comedy Central. I even downloaded the Comedy Central app to be able to watch the show. It was a horrific app. But I had to see these things, and I really felt a connection to what Nathan was doing on his show with regards to realism. And he was coming at it from a nonfiction point of view and then making it fictionalized. And I like taking fiction and making it feel real. And so it really did kind of feel like the two things were kismet, but it was just me watching his show, so I didn't have any connection to him at all. Yeah. So I just remembered feeling that and really loving it. And then there was an ad I saw on the subway that was referencing a Blacklist ad where he was like on a cover of a magazine, but it was the exact same thing, and it was like a Nathan For You ad, and I couldn't believe it. So I took a picture, I sent it to my wife, and I was like, what are the chances that this guy is obsessed and angered by exactly the same weird advertisement that I am upset by, and nobody will talk to me or listen to me when I say, oh yeah, there's that ad, the stupid magazine. Everybody just looked at me like I had three heads. But I took a picture, I sent it to her, and of course it was just further kind of cementing this idea. And eventually I wrote an article about it in CinemaScope magazine, which is in Canada. It's a film criticism magazine. It was on Smokers Allowed, that episode. And it was a really like long thing. I put a lot of time into it and effort, and I was really just looking at it and seeing how he was trying to go, or at least how I thought he was using realism and all of that stuff. I connected it to Tati. There's a lot of stuff in there, and it was something I was proud of. But when I met him, he had read that article, and it was really just a mutual appreciation of one another. You know, like he liked my movies, I liked his show, and we just decided to meet up in New York, and I had a great time. You know,
I think I want to say real quick.
Yeah.
I think in the article you called him like something like the love child of Jacques Tati and Mark Cuban.
Yes. I think that is. Yeah, I think the beginning line I was really proud of. I forget what I said. It was like, here, let me look it up. But it was something about the more you make something real. I don't want to butcher my own words. Hold on. I called it the gag of realism. That was the title of the article. But anyway, so as I'm looking this up, I will speak. I'll multitask. So essentially what happened was I met Nathan here. We were at Russ and Daughters. It was just the two of us having a good time. We said goodbye, and when I was in LA next, I was like, you know what? I should reach out to that guy. I had a fun time. And I reached out to him, and then we went and got dinner, and it was kind of just like the start of a friendship, you know. And so it's weird to like think of like as an adult actively going out and trying to find a new friend, but that's what I was doing, you know. And here we go. When you become obsessed with creating realism, you create something fake. When you become obsessed with recreating reality, you can create something hilarious. So take with that what you will. I think that could apply to something like this, possibly. But anyway, so we kept just kind of hanging out, talking, and he had mentioned something about the first time he moved to LA, and he was coming from Canada, needed a new cell phone, and he went to go buy a cell phone, and on his way there, somebody asked him for some change, and he didn't have any, so he said, I'm really sorry, I don't have any change, and the woman looked at him and said, I curse you. And he kind of was like, okay, went on to the phone store and bought his phone, but he's like, I don't need this in my life. So he went to an ATM, took out $20, went back to the spot where she was, gave her the money, and said, is the curse lifted? And she smiled and said, yes, it is. So it was like, he felt better, never thought about it again. And as he's telling me this story, I'm like, well, what if she wasn't there? What if you went to go give her the money and she was not there? Then your whole life would be ruined. You know, you'd potentially have this thing hanging over you forever. And then what does that do about everything in your life? You go to the store, you go do this. It's all clouded by this idea. And that was like the initial seed of the curse here. And then it was just like, okay, well, that's funny. And then we just kind of moved on, and we just kept texting each other how we could use this to do something. But it wasn't, the main impetus wasn't to work together. It was kind of actually, we didn't want to work together. You know, we kept trying to talk ourselves out of working together. This is a stupid idea. Can't do it, whatever. But it just kept, we couldn't convince ourselves not to do anything. So it got more and more detailed, and then we realized, okay, if we're going to actually do this, let's sit down and flesh out the whole thing. And that's what we did. And then we pitched it in 2018, and then it's just been constantly evolving ever since. And the thing changed again when we got on the ground, you know, because we had to pick a location to shoot this in. And once we settled on Española, because the way that these shows work is there's always a major metropolis, and then there's some place around 20 minutes away. That's kind of the cutoff, 25 minutes away from that main place. And that's your primo spot to gentrify. That's the place you got to go because everything's going to be way cheaper, but you're close enough to where the people actually wanted to live, you know? So that's where we were looking at. There were all these places around the United States that fit that bill. And once we settled on Santa Fe and Española, we discovered an entirely new set of problems and circumstances that we then had to explore. And we were casting people from the area. We were shooting on location, and we basically just lived there for 7 months and did everything we could to incorporate it into the show. And it became even more different, you know? But at the core of it, we did want to make this show about these people, how they affect them, the judgments, everything, and just kind of also just like how do you tell it from a specific point of view. But it really was an amazing collaboration, you know, and we just really complemented each other in a lot of different ways, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, you just spoke to a question I wanted to ask about the choice to set it in Española in particular. But you know, when I was like thinking about that question, I was flashing back to an interview we did when I think when Heaven Knows What came out, and I was talking to you and Josh about the prospect of ever working someplace other than New York City, and so yeah, considering the fact that you know you're the co-maker, I guess, of the TV show, you know, sort of some of your impressions on working in that capacity outside of New York.
It was the thing that I actually think was we were just talking about it. It's like when you're in the city, you can go really far away and have a lot of obstruction. You know, you can be really far away and do that, but there's so much space. You have to go really far back to like really to make it feel that way. And when you do that, you expose a lot of the landscape, and you can use a lot of that. And we were working with a lot of wide shots together, and so these were all new things that I think were coming out, and you were listening to the environment. You know, Maceo and I were always talking about like the brownness of all of these things. And Santa Fe is a very strange place where all the buildings look the same. And it's dictated by law that it has to have this specific shade of brown stucco on it. And it's a really interesting thing that like this happened in the 50s, and you think everything's old, and then you're like, am I in Disneyland right now? What's going on? But everybody's living in this kind of in this place, and then you go to some place like Española, and it's very different. It's so close, but and so then you kind of wonder what the contrast is and what's going on, and it in a way it's different because it's not, but the thing that stays the same is you're constantly always open to what the environment is going to give you, what the people who are there are going to give you, and when you talk to them and listen to them, you can actually increase and make everything deeper, you know? And that the thing that didn't change was we street casted, we were talking to people, we were in the parking lots and finding actors, and Nathan would point somebody out, and I'd go up to them and try and get them in the show, and they would say no, and I'd be so upset. And so we really were just constantly working in that area, and it was an interesting experience because it wasn't New York City, but it did feel familiar in a lot of ways, just because it was like, okay, can we do this there? And I guess it was just also fun for me to just explore a new place and realize that like you can do that. You know, it's like humans are humans. It doesn't matter where they are, you know. People will act the same way. They're different because of their community and their surroundings, but generally there's similarities there. So it was just, I do love looking at it, especially it looks so good on this screen, and so you can really feel the dirt and the dust and all of this stuff that just kind of is what the desert brings. And I like to say this is a Western. You know, I really do believe that The Curse is a Western, you know, these people on the new frontier, as they would say. And I actually don't think Whitney and Asher they would like that, probably, you know? So it's like, I don't know. It definitely was an awesome experience in that sense that you got to know a whole new place, and then we weren't hiding from that. We were including it in every way, shape that we could. So,
Maybe I'll ask one more, and then we'll see what the audience wants to know. So of late we've been seeing you all over the place. Like you're acting in a lot of films these days.
Crazy.
So inevitably, I kind of have to ask, as a filmmaker who then starts acting in other directors' films, and then you're making the series with Nathan. It's I'm kind of curious. What. Maybe this will be hard to sort of think through, but like bear with me. Sort of like what are some like impressions or insights or whatever that you think that you've gleaned over the last few years working with like Paul Thomas Anderson, Claire Denis, and Christopher Nolan, and all these like big ticket directors.
It's kind of insane, but like just a quick thing. There was a slight overlap with Oppenheimer and this, which was very interesting because for a very long period of time, I was going back and forth between New York and Los Alamos for the first half of the year. And then for the entire next part of the year, I was in Santa Fe and Española, which is 20 minutes from Straight Shot to Los Alamos. So it really became like this second home, It was just so in that sense, I remembered actually when I stayed at the hotel. It was a small Holiday Inn in Los Alamos, the only hotel that could fit the entire cast of Oppenheimer. So we're staying at this Holiday Inn, and I remembered seeing in the lobby there was a placard that said, "Check out your windows. If you look closely, you'll see like the photovoltaic light cells that were developed here in our backyard in Los Alamos." And I'm like, "Oh my God, we have these homes made of mirrors. This is perfect." And then of course it's amazing how when that comes on, that was just again to talk about the theatrical experience over in Alice Tully, just even the words Los Alamos because of Oppenheimer carried such an enormous weight that like it just read like Whitney was dropping a bomb, so which was kind of incredible of a weird cross section. But just to kind of go about like what you learn. It's like you can learn if you want to, or you can't if you don't want to. But I was there, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take this opportunity to observe as well as act in it. And if you want, I could go through all three. Let's just say, okay, so with Paul, it was such an awesome experience because he has a very unique ability to see all of the subtle things that you're doing as an actor. So you feel very comfortable and feel very seen, even in the slightest, smallest decisions that you're going to make. Like if I'm upset and I happen to look away and I look down and it's just like, and you do that, he's seeing all of that and encouraging you. So you feel like you can really go out on a limb with your subtlety. And then on top of that, there's this really friendly kind of form of, it's not like, it was like if I did a line where I said the line, then I realized, I don't have a way to end this. So I was just like, that's it. And at the end of it, and he's like, "Oh, that's really funny. I don't think we could do much better than that." But it wasn't like "Oh my God, that's amazing." It was a subtle kind of way of saying like, "Let's go better." And I was like, "All right." I took that, and then we just did a fucking round robin of like 30 of these, and it was a great thing. And I was like, "Okay, that level of kind of fun competitiveness is something you can kind of use to your advantage." And then one thing that completely shocked me on Oppenheimer was just seeing how free this insane movie was. That literally you go into a room and there's nothing set up. You're just doing the scene. And then after that, there's this intense level of discovery as you're going through. And you're just kind of seeing how to best do it. And I'm like, that's cool. Like maybe that's something you could do too. And so you really are seeing these things. And it's also just like, just on a funny level, it's like being a director in addition to an actor. There was one moment in one of the scenes in Oppenheimer where I guess Chris came up to me and he like got really close. He's like, "Look, I'm really sorry. I got to do this, but I'm going to take that line and I'm going to give it to the other actor." And I'm like, "Fine by me." Like, great. But then he's like, "Oh my God, I forgot. Like you're not like you're a director. Normally that would be a big deal for me to have that conversation." And you're just like, "Yeah, go for it. Do what you got to do." So it was just a funny thing there. But and then with Claire, she's just this remarkable. She has this remarkable ability to make everything feel fresh and new. You'll be doing a scene like this and we'll be talking. We'll have shot it for the entire first half of the day. And she's like, "You know what? That's done. Let's stand now." And then everybody stands up and then you just finish the scene. And you're like, "Well, what about the coverage to get us up?" She's like, "Doesn't matter." And I'm like, wow, that's a refreshing way to look at things, you know? You could just barrel forward like that. But then she also had this amazing sense of humor that like, and you kind of realize everybody's doing something similarly if they're doing it like great. So that was fun. And so of course it actually was like a really interesting way to kind of lead into this because you got all these fresh new tools.
Totally. Let's open it up. If you have a question, raise your hand. We'll bring.
Quickly, okay. I wanted to do something. I just got this from A24. I only have one, so I figured what I would do is throw it into the audience, but like a bouquet of flowers at a wedding. So I'm going to turn around and I'm just going to throw it, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Before we go into and then whoever catches it has to ask a question. How about that?
Perfect.
All right. Here we go. You ready? All right. There we go.
All right. What do you want to know? Let me repeat it for the people
Yes.
in the back. So the question is, what's Benny's favorite HGTV reality TV show, and what are the shows that informed the show within the show?
So before we were kind of trying, we knew that we wanted to do something with reality television. We didn't know who it was going to be. And at the time, my wife was pregnant. I was going to the doctor's office all the time, and I had to sit on the outside of the waiting room. And in this windowless box with fluorescent lights, there was just HGTV. Hours and hours and hours of this stuff, over and over and over again. And I became obsessed. I loved it. It was Property Brothers, House Hunters, there's Fixer Upper, there's Flip or Flop. You know, you have all of these ones, and there's ones where there's not even a host. It's just kind of a narrator talking about, I think this is Property Hunters, where you just kind of see people looking at homes. And I'm like, that's great. It's like, I'm obsessed with Street Easy. I'm obsessed with Zillow. You know, you want to see all these things. And so, but then it's like you're looking at it, and as you're watching it, you realize, oh, there's hosts here. And they're incorporating their families. And it got to the point where I was seeing kids being born on these channels. So it's like, I'm like, oh, this is just a couple. They're newly married. I'm like, oh, they got a child on the way. She's pregnant. And then the next season, you're like, oh my God, she just had the kid. And the kid's at the table. And there was an episode of Flip or Flop where they were just sitting at a diner table, all of the family, and they were just like, oh, such a good morning, huh? And they're like, yeah, it's been really great. And they're like, you know, I've really been thinking about that house on what was it, Potter Avenue? Like, we should go check that out. And I'm like, what is going on right now? They're just literally acting like we're just catching them at their breakfast nook. And
it's
they
like
happen to be
Howard Hawks movie.
Yes, and they were just like happen to bring up the next new property, and then they go and saw it. And I'm like, what's it like for that kid? You know, and then there was something on Fixer Upper where they showed the shot, and it's like I'm seeing behind the scenes stuff of this now. So it's like they showed like the making of Fixer Upper, and you saw Joanna Gaines. She's there. She's talking to camera. She's so happy. And then the making of cut to a third camera of her filming, and as she was on camera, here, and here, just out of frame, were her 3 children. And I'm like, what is that about? You know. So what is going on with these lives? And how do you get into these shows and see what's there? And it was just really kind of insane. And it became like, okay, let's look at this and these people and try and really understand it. And Flip or Flop is really kind of the most insane one because they got to a point where they weren't even married anymore and they were doing the show. And it was just like, what is going on here? And at one point he was like in the mountains with like a gun, and I was just like, what? And I'm like, these people are, and then really early on, I remember there was like, when we were trying to figure out the tone, we were just saying like, there were all these before and after shots that were, I could take it on my phone, I could show you, but you can't see it, I'm sorry. There was basically all the before and after shots of the homes, and I cut them together back to back, so you saw like detritus, new tile, broken ceiling, new like no drop ceiling fan, and like newly glazed bathroom, like all these things, and you just saw all of the change. But then it was set to Alice Coltrane, and you're watching it to that, and all of a sudden you're just like, ooh, that tile just got scary, you know? Like, what is that about? And you're and seeing things getting torn down, and just kind of, okay, now you can look at all this stuff with a different view or a different lens, and it's not judging. The music isn't judging it. It's just kind of existing on a higher plane, telling you to look at it differently. It's not making a decision. It's not making an assumption about who or what is happening, but it's asking a question, and it's not necessarily giving you an answer. And just something that Nathan and I have always just kind of, as we're like looking at this and seeing the kind of finished product, it's so weird what motivation does to somebody. You could have two people do the same exact thing, and they could both be the best thing in the world. But motivation changes how you feel about that. Like, what is that? And so it really just became a lot more as we kind of, and I don't think anybody but we started making we were going to make a 30-minute comedy with this show. And then as we got into it, the scripts just kept getting longer and longer. And then as we were on set, the pacing of it kind of changed. And we're like, this is an hour drama. Like, I don't know. And it's still really funny. But it was the things, you just have to be open to new stuff. But good question.
All right. We'll go right there. And hold on for 1 second while we bring you the microphone. No. Her. The person with the microphone.
And there's I'm down to stay until all the questions are asked, just so you know. There's no last question here. I'm going to exhaust all of you.
Oh. Hello. Oh, boy. I'm very curious about what you were talking about with finding things on location in Santa Fe and Española in the area. The mirrored houses, was that something that you had from the beginning? Did you find them and incorporate them? How did that come about?
Well, it was we always knew that Whitney had to have a very specific design for her homes because she thinks of herself as an artist, So she had to have a very unique point of view with regards to what these were. And we had seen this artist, Doug Aiken, who had created these mirrored homes, and we thought it would be very perfect if Whitney just copied it, and just took it and tried to make a statement that she wasn't doing it in nature, she was doing it in the world. And then the problem became, well, now you have to build these homes. And they didn't exist anywhere. So literally, as we're finding the neighborhood, we had to get 3 homes. And that's what's so important about that final shot where it kind of travels with them. We did that to show how close all these homes actually are. You could walk to all of them. There was a true neighborhood where we built 3 of these places, 3 of these mirrored homes, and it was insane that you could they would just ping pong back and forth. But we had to build them, and it was just, again, it's this idea that she thinks she's not imposing onto the community because, hey, the homes disappear into the surroundings. You can't even see them, But what about the guy next door? His house is essentially on fire from the reflection, So it's a good idea, maybe not the execution that you're thinking, but it was definitely something that it was a concept that we had that Katie Byron, who was the production designer, I cannot believe that she was able to pull this off, but she built 3 of these homes on a crazy budget, and it was so insane. We had to get really kind of creative with how we did it because you have to make an inside and an outside, and these people were letting us build these giant structures around their homes, and then they were that way for 6 months. It was crazy. So
to the 3rd row. Yeah, right there.
Thank you. I love the show, by the way. It's so stressful, it hurts. But I was really interested when I first watched it how striking the cinematography style that you kind of dubbed, I think you called it candid camera realism. And it does such a good job of making you feel like you're spying on them in the most uncomfortable way. And I was just wondering, at what point in the process of developing the show did you come up with the idea to shoot it like that?
Well, Nathan and I were talking about it kind of you have to have that from the beginning. You really have to figure out how you're going to, differentiate the show that we're shooting from the show that they're shooting. That was kind of the main impetus. But at the same time, it had to feel like an element of, there had to be a realistic feeling to it, because again, just the edict was, can't look like anything on television. You see a lot of TV shows, and they all are just perfect, crisp, perfectly lit, perfectly shot, reverse, bang, 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 bang. It's just, you kind of get really sick of it, or at least I did. And Nathan did, and we were just like, okay, how do we shake this up? And there was I think it's like there's episodes of like To Catch a Predator. There's Big Brother. You have Candid Camera. These are all shows that are like using these weird camera placements to document the things that are in front of them. And there was one clip in particular, it was old Candid Camera, like 1960. So they were shooting on black and white film, and they really had to hide themselves because there was no other way that they could do it. So there was this one shot, there was a whole thing where the mechanic was being told to fix a car, and when he got into the car, there was no steering wheel in the car, and that was the funny joke at the end of it. But the way that they filmed it was in a van across the street. So at one point, they walked a little too far, and they were no longer in the shot. So what happened? They just pressed on the gas and slowly drove till the shot was good. And then we're like, that's cool. So there were a lot of times where it was like we just realized we could really play with that idea and just see what that evoked.
In regards to your hair, was that Nathan's idea or yours?
We both were just really, the Dougie part of it, we were both trying to really find, there were a bunch of different reality show producers who kind of were incorporated into the look. And there was this one guy in particular who had long hair. And then there was also, Emma sent this one picture of another guy who she saw who was also like had similar. So there's just kind of a certain look that we really wanted to settle on, specifically with regards to when you see Dougie, you think you understand him. You're like, oh, I know that guy. I've seen guys like that with the rings that never come off and the jewelry and the rock and roll attitude. But like, you can write that person off, or you can look at them and try and understand what they're going through. And again, it's a show about judgment. You can look at somebody and judge them, and that is bad. Or is it? Or maybe you're making the right decision. But so specifically with Dougie, we just kind of wanted to go as far as humanly possible that we could go, and then I guess I had to then try and humanize him, and try and make him not like a caricature. And again, there were like little things just that, with regards to the hair, I don't remember, but like it was the kind of thing where it was actually the woman Ahu who did the hair on the shoot was the person who was in charge of my hair on Oppenheimer, actually. So I had literally been sitting in her chair for 3 hours a day, getting my hair straightened in the other direction, and it dyed. It was such a painful process, but she was so good at it. And then we're like, we really want long hair, but I don't know how to do it believable. And she's like, I know exactly how. And we got this insane thing. And then, of course, we write into this episode a swimming scene. Well,
it's kind of latter day Howard Stern hair. No?
Yeah, it's an archetype. You see it all the time. And it also like there was the Johnny Depp trial was happening while we were shooting, and there was this image of his hand that he had that like was out there, and I remember zooming in on the hand and like sending it to Katina, who did the costumes, and like, let's get that, 'cause it's all the stuff, But it literally, it's like we could have one idea, and then the next day we read something, and we're like, that's it, done, totally change it. So, but yeah, the thing is like as we were, what's interesting about Asher and Dougie, and they both kind of have different style, but it's both expensive, One is a little bit more obvious than the other, but Nathan's outfits are really cool and kind of really pricey. Some of those sweaters and some of those sneakers are expensive. So they're just different kind of sides of the same coin, and then they went to camp together. So you kind of see a little bit of a difference. And I know you probably have all seen people who, when you see them, like, oh my God, I didn't expect them to go that far, But it was just, he always had the long hair. Let's just say that.
Yeah, let's take a question from the very back, because I feel like they've been neglected so far.
The show is excellent, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm interested in the show's... Hello.
He said the show's excellent.
Yeah.
Case closed.
I'm interested in the show's political commentary. it seems like this very overt critique and caricature of progressivism. Is there anything you could share about that?
I could. I will withhold until a later date because I do believe that it's all in there, and something we were very specific about is not being able to pin it down. You don't know where it is. You don't know what it's like. You kind of are in the same way that you go through the world, which is you have to make those decisions and snap judgments, and you're given all the information, and I don't necessarily want to ruin that for other people because some people can, like I said, two people can be watching the same thing and get something else out of it, but obviously there's a political aspect to this show, and when you're dealing, it's like but it is interesting. We didn't set out to make something, although that's not true. There was this element, like I was saying earlier, when you see I didn't say that to you guys, did I? It's all getting mixed up. I was on a plane watching one of these HGTV shows, and there was a slogan in it that said, if you don't like your neighborhood, change it. I was just like, whoa, where did that come from? I was like, what's happening on HGTV? So that should tell you enough. But it was an interesting thing. We were always very kind of concerned about not having it be, you couldn't get a handle on it. Because once you get a handle on something, you understand it. Once you understand it, you stop paying attention. So I think that's the key here.
All right, and on the bench right there.
So this is kind of going back to something that you were talking about earlier, but there's so many little quirks and weird things about each of the characters that are so funny. I'm obsessed with Dougie swimming with all of his rings on, and I was just
they don't
wondering,
come off.
Oh, they're glued on, I'm sure. But I was wondering if there's any other like little quirks or mannerisms or things that you adopted as you went on filming that kind of brought Dougie into this enigma and off the page.
The thing is when you put on those rings, it's almost like putting on a cape. It is the craziest feeling in the world. You just literally, you start using your hands more when you talk, When you're on the phone, you're gladly using your thumb to kind of swipe up. You just become different because you want to show this stuff off, And again, the scarf changes the way that you move, and the boots, you want to show it off. You really are conscious of those things. But that's, I think, that's just the beauty of costuming, And with Dougie in particular, it was I realized that I was getting into a deep place when I stopped needing the photos to tell me where the which hands it went on. Because I would just kind of roll in and just be put it on. And then you'd have these big boots. The thing is, it was definitely not a fun outfit to have in the middle of Española, which can get to be 100 degrees. Because you're in these leather pants and these leather cowboy. What I'm walking on in that desert scene is I'm wearing these slide up, these crazy zip up leather shoes. And I'm walking through anthills, and it was insane. And it is just kind of these little things they're fun to play with because you don't want to. The best part about it was when Nathan and I were looking at all the different costumes, it was so easy to go just a little bit too far and then everything falls apart. You're riding such a fine line with all this stuff. And again, it's also just specifically with the reality show. Nathan was always they are making an elevated show. It is not the same as the HGTV show that you are used to. It's elevated. And these things, you have these kind of edicts and these mindsets that you go into that you just have to adopt as the character, and you have to adopt as when you're making this thing. But with Dougie, it was just the rings, the necklace. I wear glasses. I'm wearing contacts now, glasses on my eyeballs. But all of this stuff really did kind of, the watch, that all these things were really important to him. And it was just also great because there was that jacket, Katina had found this guy who was making these dead stock awesome Santa Fe jackets that I wish I had the guts to wear. And I was like, but Dougie would wear that in a second. But he's also like, he shops, you know, he's a shopper. And he's a little bit self-conscious, so he wants to know what it looks like. Can I pull this off? And that's what he asked Asher, and it's $1,700. It's actually how much it costs. And it was just so funny. Some of these, like, I think one of the jackets I was wearing in the casino in episode 3 was like $1,700 also. His outfits were so expensive, and you couldn't return them. But it was like it's not like you have to learn how to wear the clothing. You can't let it wear you, you know? And that just takes a mindset. But again, a lot of it was like, I could do this. Like, I think it was in one of our camera tests in like the parking lot. I had to stop a car to ask for directions, and I just really felt like I could just go like this. And they stopped. So it does give you that kind of power. And then also with Emma and her clothing, she hated those pants, those star pants. And like, we really just had a lot of fun with like really playing with these things that she's really she's really thinking about the outfit she's wearing without actually making it look like she's thinking about it. You know, when she puts on that hat to go on that walk, you know? Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be controversial given what you said earlier.
I know, but I'm fine.
Yeah, I know you're fine.
We could do a little conversation outside, right?
Well, here's what I propose. Okay, so just now that was the last question actually. But what
that's the best way to do it, actually.
Yeah.
Because now you know what? You should take this and you should use this forever. Anybody who does moderation, just say the last question was the last question, because then you don't have to disappoint anybody.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool.
But look. Here's what I propose. Why don't you come back in a couple of weeks?
Yes.
We'll
Let's
screen
do it.
some more episodes.
December
of the show.
15th, right?
Yep.
We're gonna do episodes 6 and 7. That's gonna be awesome. I'll be here. Yep. We're doing it, and then we'll do 8 and 9, which you do not. 8 and 9 might be my favorite pairing, so don't sleep on those ones. And yeah, I'll bring another hat next time too. So
cool. So
this literally is like, I can't thank everybody for coming out enough. This has been an amazing thing, and yeah, I really just want people to watch it, enjoy it, or not enjoy it for the right reasons. So I don't know. So, but either way, thank you, and thank you guys. This is awesome.
Benny, thank you, thank all of you, and yeah, we'll be back.